Hello and welcome to another Thursday night live Q&A. Very pleased on this hot night to be joined by my colleague James Emptage from the assessment team. James is one of the area engineers. Good evening, James. How's your day been so far, including the football?
Hello, Sam. It's a good day, thank you. Just a nice, easy assessment today. Just went to a house and then got back and went and watched the football, which was really good. In the end, anyway.
Yeah, certainly it kept us watching. And at one point, I have to admit, I was thinking, "There's no way this is going to turn out for a win." But a win it was in the end. But yeah, good to see you. Okay, just to make the audience aware, we'll start off tonight as we always do with the question of the week that we posted out on social media on Monday. And then while people are putting questions in the chat, we hope they will be, although after the football we're not too sure just how many people we will be seeing tonight. But yeah, please do put your questions in the chat. While we're waiting for people to post questions, what we'll do is we'll cover off some ones that were held over from previous sessions that we didn't get round to in terms of time. So we'll run through those. But yeah, please do, if you've got a question, please do put it in the chat. Remember that everybody in the chat to be kind to each other. There's no such thing as a stupid question, only stupid answers. And please remember to be respectful to each other in the chat, as the whole idea of this evening is that we're going to collectively try and help each other. Nobody knows it all, and our aim tonight is to try and improve our collective knowledge and understanding of all things electrical and BS 7671. So please do support each other in the chat. But yeah, if you've got a question, it might be current, it might be one that you've often wondered, I wonder what the NIC view is, then please do post it in the chat and we'll do our best to get round to it. We do just need to cover off a few things first. So we will offer advice and guidance on the questions asked, but of course our guidance will be limited by the extent of the information in the question. We can't and do not assume any liability for any loss or damage caused by an error or omission in any advice or guidance that we give, whether that error or omission is the result of negligence or any other cause. If we do reference legislation, it's not to be considered as legal advice. And most importantly, as you can see at the bottom there, individuals must rely on their own skill and judgment when making use of any guidance. So, as I said, we'll start off with the question of the week that we posted out on Monday. So this week's question of the week was, would a baptismal pool used in religious ceremonies come under the scope of section 702 of BS 7671 covering swimming pools? So would a baptismal pool fall under the scope of section 702 covering swimming pools of other basins within 7671? What's our thoughts there, James?
So in one of the changes in Amendment 4, the correct answer is now A, yes. So it is included in the scope now. Me and Sam were talking before the chat. It's just got a number of risks that are associated with the section. In swimming pools, you're being drenched in water, dipped in water. There's just a lot of risks that are consistent with that. So they are added to the section now in Amendment 4.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a question that we would get from time to time, and I think others in the industry would get from time to time. And so one of the things that they do when there is an update to 7671 is they take the opportunity to clarify things which would be beneficial to be clarified. So it was seen then. So this isn't direct from anywhere else, but it was seen that as questions were being asked, and as James said, the perceived risks are just the same as with a swimming pool, because you're talking about a body being immersed, and then around them there is going to be general lighting, socket outlets that you would associate with those churches or religious halls. So the perceived risk was just the same as if you would for a public swimming pool. So yeah, it was seen that would be a good opportunity, together with other changes required for reasons such as updates to the IEC standards or updates to the BSEN standard. It would be an opportunity to provide clarification, which would be deemed useful by the industry. So it clarified that point. So yeah. Okay, so please do put questions into the chat. It would be really good to see if we can answer your questions tonight. And if it is a small audience, then you've got a great chance of us having time to go through your question. While like I say, we'll try and answer some of the ones that we didn't get round to from previous sessions. So the first one that falls into that category is when testing a type A RCD, we were told to test and record the ×1 value. But do we still need to test and record the type A RCDs with a ×5 value? So again, quite a common question, and we all know that previous template forms in 7671 did have multiple columns, but it was clarified actually. So let's just have a look. We get the right answer. Right, okay, so the answer is no. It was made quite clear within chapter 64 for our initial verification checks. There's a note which appears in a couple of locations which says quite clearly that regardless of the RCD type, so whether it is AC, A, B, F, regardless of the type, the effectiveness is deemed to have been verified when an RCD disconnects within the time stated below with an alternating current test at rated residual operating current I delta N. So based on the rating of the RCD, 30 milliamp, 100 milliamp, 300 milliamp, so long as it disconnects for a general non-delayed type RCD within 300 milliseconds max, or for a delay or S-type RCD if it disconnects between 130 and 500 milliseconds, then the RCD function is deemed to be adequate and compliant with 7671. So although there may be times when you do use other tests, perhaps when you're fault finding, a ramp test might be useful. There's no requirement to meet the requirement for initial verification in 7671 to do anything other than a ×1 test, and that is regardless of the type. You can use the AC test at the rated residual current for the RCD. So there's nothing to stop you doing others, but you don't need to, and the standard templates and forms now will only give you one column for recording test results. Would you add anything to that?
Yeah. I mean, it was good news to a lot of contractors, I think, because testers from all ages are still useful and can still perform the required test of 7671. With the introduction of all the different types of RCDs, or the introduction of the enhancement and the more of them, there had to be a point where you'd be continuing to buy new testers just to keep up with the changes. So regardless of tests, AC setting on the RCD and just a one-time test, and that is it. Much easier than before anyway.
Yeah, and so like we say, you can do others, and you might do others under certain circumstances. In particular, if you were fault finding, RAM test can be quite useful if you're getting nuisance tripping, but there's no requirement during initial verification to do anything other than ×1.
Especially with RCPOs populating the majority of the boards now as well, so there's much more time saved, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, certainly, especially domestic wise, almost all circuits are RCD protected now. So yeah, absolutely. So the clarification was good, and as I say, that was that's made clear, and you can see on the screen there, it's a note which is in a number of places associated with RCD testing. Okay, another one is timber frame. Would a timber frame dwelling be classed as a higher risk residential building?
No, is the answer to that. The reason being, it just doesn't fall under the high risk residential buildings. It's the buildings over 80 metres in height or excess of 6 stories, whichever is met first, or generally, or 7 stories in some places, I believe, depending where you're. I think that's the current requirement, but. There's a register online where higher risk residential buildings are listed. You can put the postcode in on a government website, and it will tell you if that building's been registered as a high risk residential building as well. It will tell you who's in charge of it, the story. So timber frame, and we were talking before, the reason it changed, timber frame buildings were typically removed from it. It's just because the focus was on AFDDs to protect people who are asleep. So it's to give advance warning for people sleeping, to give people more time to evacuate the building, more knowledge, or whether that's stay put also. But just the risk is from people sleeping. The timber frame buildings already have a number of protective measures on them.
Yeah. Yeah, and as James said, we were talking about this before the event tonight, and yeah, there was some guidance in a previous edition of the 18th when AFDDs were introduced of timber frame being an example where they could be used, but as James said, that requirement's been refined now to those 4 types of building. High risk residential, care homes, HMOs, and purpose-built student accommodation. And as James rightly said, it's all associated with people possibly being asleep and then being a possible evacuation risk due to the size of the building and the complexity of escape. So yeah, it's also worth saying that timber frame buildings would be covered in section 422, which is in chapter 42, but it talks about buildings with made from construction flammable material. So there are some 7671 requirements, but yeah, it's just because it's timber frame it's not naturally assumed to be high risk, unless, as James says, it falls into that category of 18 metres high or in excess of 6 stories. Another one that we get, which is common, is when installing an item of equipment, does the contractor have to follow the equipment manufacturer's instructions? And again, it's a nice simple answer to this as well, in that the answer is no. There's no requirement for conformance to BS 7671 to blindly follow the manufacturer's instructions. There was a subtle change, so the regulation associated with this clearly says that the installation of electrical equipment shall take account of manufacturer's instructions, and that was a subtle change from the 2008 Amendment 3 2015, so 17th edition, which had, under that same regulation number, it did say electrical equipment shall be installed in accordance with the instructions provided by the manufacturer of the equipment. So that said you had to follow it, but it was seen that sometimes the instructions aren't for the type of environment that it's being installed in. We get that quite often now with shall we say global products that have got manufacturer's instructions which aren't appropriate for the location that they're actually being installed in. So that's where it was pushed back to need to take account of manufacturer's instructions, and it's then down to the engineering judgment of the designer and the installer to ensure that the equipment's suitable for that location. Because again, in our fundamental principles, there's a reg that talks about everything has to be suitable for the environment it's installed in, or the way you install it makes it suitable for that environment. So that kind of covers you as well in terms of what you need to do, and that may be a reason why you don't blindly follow manufacturer's instructions, but as the current regulation says, you take account of them.
Yeah,
Would you?
I find I find where you find it a lot, Sam, is on the instructions to equipment, whether it's heat pumps, inverters, where they stipulate an RCD, but that's just sort of a generic instructions that, like, if the circuit doesn't need an RCD, then you're better off without an RCD in some circumstances. So I think that's quite a good one for the instruction from that scenario where the instructions are actually sort of countering the installation a little bit sometimes, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right, and we've had examples in the past, not recently, but a number of years ago, when the different types of RCDs were becoming more proliferant, and there was one. It was a boiler manufacturer actually that said you need to provide a type F RCD. And it was, well, wait a minute, and when some inquiries were made, it was literally the fact that the boiler manufacturer had said which is the most complex RCD that provides the highest level of safety, and somebody had told them an F, and so they said, okay, well, that's what we'll recommend, thinking that it was only a recommendation and not something people would follow. So yeah, it is a good point that sometimes product doesn't take account of the type of installation it's being installed in, and therefore the effect that incorrect guidance on installation practices could have on that installation.
Yeah, and I mean the manufacturer's instructions get revised a lot as well, don't they, in some cases? So it could be a subtle tweak to their instructions where they change it. And that's why it's important. The installation needs to comply first, doesn't it? And then works the instructions following that.
Yeah, very much so. And we know now with global products, it could simply be a translation error that results in something. So again, that's another thing to consider. Okay, yeah, please do. Chat is very quiet. It may be because we've picked a night straight after the football, possibly. But yeah, if you've got a question, then please do put it into the chat. Another one that we had previously. So can I supply a fire alarm panel from a remote distribution board? What's our thoughts there, James?
So the general answer is yes. You try and install it as close to the origin as practicable, but generally, yeah, it's the most sort of the best way of putting it, the best place for it in the installation. So you don't, I mean, try and keep it to a minimum, but yeah, I mean, if it needs to go downstream multiple dBs, that's just how it is. A lot with 539 Part 1, it will state about labelling so other than the origin, every main switch, you should have a label on warning that the switch to this dB will disconnect the fire alarm, and then a label on the fire alarm circuit. So you can, as long as you can place it downstream, as long as you are labeling the circuit and the devices that are going to operate it and disconnect it potentially first.
Yeah, because I guess that's the whole reason why they don't want it being fed from a board, and then one of the intermediary boards being inadvertently switched off, maybe for maintenance purposes, without realizing what's further downstream. So yeah, it is.
That's why downstream you should have a warning on every isolator, basically, that's going to turn it off. Every switch that's going to involve it, other than the origin main switch.
Yeah, because
you're not going to turn off the whole building, are you, in general? So I think so. You may well maintain or work on the boards downstream from that.
Yeah, because it could be on a large site that the supply comes in from a different place. So your origin of supply could be far away from the entry point where you want the fire panel. So yeah, it often does make sense. But yeah, I think that it's just a strong consideration that needs to be given to ensure that if you are downstream, you're not going to inadvertently isolate that panel and switch it off. Okay, so a great question that we get answered asked from time to time. So if I extend a domestic lighting circuit to supply a mains powered smoke alarm, do I need to add a 30 milliamp RCD protection for compliance with 411.3.4? So we know that 411.3.4 talks about circuits supplying luminaires requiring RCD protection in a domestic situation. So if and there's also a requirement from fire alarm standards that it's good practice to supply mains powered smoke alarms from a frequently used lighting circuit, so that it will be known whether that supply has gone down or not. So our thoughts there are that no, if we're extending that lighting circuit to provide a supply to a smoke detector, then although the applicable regulation applies to circuits supplying luminaires, extending that existing circuit to supply a smoke alarm won't affect the protective measure for the existing circuit. Therefore, RCD protection is not necessary with respect to the requirements for regulation 411.3.4. Consideration has to be given to how. So, for example, if you were burying the cable in the wall partly before it fed the fire alarm, or if it was a TT installation, you might want RCD protection anyway. But then, if it was TT, the whole circuit would probably require RCD protection. So there may be other considerations, such as cables concealed in a wall at an insufficient depth, that would require you to RCD protect the cable to the smoke detector. But generally, there's no hard and fast requirement that says you need to RCD protect the cable feeding the smoke alarm. Still very well, extremely quiet in the chat. I'm gonna get my my backroom buddy to check that our chat is live.
With regards to that, I mean, you could definitely put some comments in on the certificate, couldn't you? If existing lighting circuit's not RCD protected, but comments only, I suppose. Generally in 5839, it recommends trying to not put on an RCD overall. So yeah, if you run a new circuit and it doesn't need an RCD or an RCBO, then try not to in general to minimise disruption of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And not so much in this instance, but in other instances now in 7671, it's recognised that if you can, design RCDs out. So choose a right cable route, choose a right cable, so that you don't need RCD requirements. Let's take a look. So another common question: can I use a minor work certificate to certify work on two circuits, or to certify work on more than one circuit? A common question. What's the NIC's thoughts there, James?
The NIC's thoughts is no, because the regulation 644.4.201, it states a minor works installation certificate based on the model form given in Appendix 6 may be provided for each circuit to be added to or altered to as an alternative to an electrical installation certificate. So generally it's one minor works per circuit. Per edition, but there is, obviously I see it on assessment, there are certification packages that do allow multiple minor works, but for compliance with 7671 it should be one minor work certificate per circuit. Yeah, it is very clear. We are aware that there are software packages and certification packages that do allow you to put that, but they're not following the requirements of 7671. So yeah, just beware. Okay. You can use an electrical installation certificate for obviously multiple minor works as well. That's how it should be done, I suppose. If you want to save a bit of time by doing one electrical installation certificate, I suppose.
Yeah, it's very true. So once you get you're working on, I think we used to base it on sort of more than 4 circuits, then rather than provide 4 separate minor work certificates, you may as well just use a single installation certificate and record the inspection and test requirements for all of the 4 circuits modified. But yeah, either way is acceptable, but minor works for each circuit that's been added to or altered. Okay, we've got a few questions that have come in, so we'll take the ones from the back, put a halt for a minute, and see if we can answer these. So the first one, nice and simple, is BS 7671 Amendment 4 copy required for assessments. So we do get this very common. While we're in this transition period, so at the moment we're in this period where there are 2 current standards. So we've got the previous version, which is made up of Amendment 2, the corrigendum, and Amendment 3. That's a current version, but also Amendment 4, which was published on the 15th of April, which is April, May, June, July, coming up for 3 months now. So there are 2 current standards. While you're undertaking work, if you're still only undertaking work to the previous version, we'll call it Amendment 3, so that's the Brown Book, the corrigendum, and Amendment 3. If that's all you're doing is you're undertaking work because you're finishing it off, perhaps it's a large project, or you've chosen to not design anything new to Amendment 4 yet, which is acceptable, then you would still not need a copy of Amendment 4. If you are doing work to Amendment 4, which you could start to use directly from April the 15th onwards, then of course you're going to need a copy of Amendment 4. And if you start any work on or after October the 15th, that's when the previous edition will be withdrawn, so there will only be one standard at that point in time, which will be Amendment 4. So any work you start on or after October the 15th will have to be to Amendment 4, and therefore at that point in time you will have to have a copy of Amendment 4, because scheme rules require you to have a copy of the current standard, that will be the only one. So there is a possibility that right now, if you're still working to Amendment 3, you're still finishing off a large project, you've decided to not go to Amendment 4 yet, then you would still be able to work to Amendment 3. But there's one of the questions from the previous session was the fact that if you'd started a job to Amendment 3 before April the 15th, could you finish it? Yes, you can, but in those instances we always recommend, first of all, make the customer aware, because it's amazing how knowledgeable customers can be, and if they know there's a new standard, they'll expect work to be done to that new standard. So if you are finishing a job that was already started to Amendment 3, then we always suggest at the earliest possible opportunity, talk to your customer about that. Second thing is to check any contract. If you've got a written contract, make sure that the words the work must be completed to the latest standard isn't in there, because that would drive you to Amendment 4 straight away. There may be other interested third parties like insurers, licensing authorities, that also may insist on you working to the latest edition, which would be Amendment 4. So be mindful of that if you are still working to Amendment 3. And I think our general advice is start to work in compliance with Amendment 4 as soon as is practical. And by that we mean, by all means, if it's a huge project, finish it off, but consider starting anything now to Amendment 4. Would you add anything to that, James?
Yeah, I mean, on your certification, that definitely what we do look for on assessment is if you only have Amendment 3, then you should only be able to issue an Amendment 3 certification if you're either working to one or the other. If you're issuing Amendment 4 certification, you must have the latest edition Amendment 4, because you're declaring that your work is to Amendment 4.
Yeah. soon as you start work into Amendment 4, you're going to need access to a copy of the standard. And as James says, you've got to make sure that you certify to the version of the standard which you've designed and installed to. So if you've designed and installed to Amendment 3, that's what 2024 should be the date that you put on your certificate in the declaration box. If you've designed and installed to Amendment 4, then it's going to be 2026. So the certificate declaration has to match the version of the standard to which you've designed and installed. Another question that's come in from outside, and we kind of touched on it earlier. For air source heat pumps, some manufacturers require an RCD type B+. Would this be classed as a departure to enter on the certificate? So yeah, our view on that is that a couple of things. B+ isn't an RCD type which is mentioned within 7671, so it's not one of the RCD types recognised as being used in installations where there's got access both by ordinary persons and non-ordinary. So that's the first thing. The second one is that if there's no British or ISO standard for a product, then it has to be recorded as a departure. So yeah, in that instance, for those reasons, one is it's an RCD type that isn't recognised within 7671, and two, it's an RCD type for which there isn't a British standard or an ISO standard. Therefore, 7671 says it has to be recorded as departure. That doesn't necessarily, recording as departure doesn't necessarily mean it's unsafe. It just means it should be recorded as departure and its use agreed by the person who's asking you to do the work. Add anything to that one, James?
If you're looking for a bit of reading, you've got the RCD guidance, which was collaborative between us and NICEIC and NAPIT, wasn't it? I believe, Sam, and that's got some guidance on the RCD selection. I think generally it's the circuit. If the circuit doesn't need RCD protecting, then you'd want to consider not putting an RCD on it. But if you are, then it says installing in accordance with manufacturer's instructions, I believe, is the general guidance. So that, like Sam said, then it would likely be a departure if you are installing a B+ RCD. Then I've not seen one, I must admit.
No, we are being told, and in particular it is by heat pump manufacturers. So again, it might be that thing of the manufacturer seeking guidance, which then doesn't take into account the requirements for the installation. Following on from the discussion we had about Amendment 3, there's a question that we'll pick up. So currently, can you do an EICR according to Amendment 3, or do you have to do it to Amendment 4? 7671 says you should do your periodic inspection and test against the current standard, and right now there are two. So you would have a choice. However, as I said, we would recommend using the latest standard, Amendment 4, as soon as is reasonably practical, and therefore, because it's a periodic inspection and test where you're not purchasing material, designing, but you're actually testing, to make your the result of your test and inspection as future proof as possible, we would suggest doing it to Amendment 4, but for compliance with 7671 you could still do it to Amendment 3. And we have been made aware, for example, on somebody that's got a large housing stock where they started the test and inspect process before Amendment 4 was published in order to get a comparable result. They wanted to continue testing the rest of the housing stock to the same version, i.e. Amendment 3, which seemed logical and, as we say, is compliant with 7671. But outside of those things, we would suggest trying to start using Amendment 4 as soon as is reasonably practical. Have you had those questions about periodic inspection, James?
No, I haven't been asked that actually. To be honest, I mean, the huge difference is the further investigation now no longer resulting in an unsatisfactory ICR, isn't it? So there's a bit of quite a big change, though. Generally, I don't see further investigation used. Very seldom do I see it, so I don't think people use it generally. But if you are using it, obviously be aware that Amendment 4 it won't fail. It won't cause an unsatisfactory report.
Yeah, yeah. Another question that came in. So on the certificate, it asks for the rated time delay. What value should be input for a Type S time delayed RCD? So on the certificate, it asks for a rated time delay. What value should be input for a Type S time delayed RCD? Thoughts on that one, James?
I'm having a little look actually. I'm trying to think the best.
While we're doing that, we'll jump to another one. So our fire rate. Go on, James. Sorry.
Sorry. I mean, with the rating, obviously, with some devices, you can change that, can't you?
Yeah.
So with certain units, so I mean, it is variable. I mean, I guess it would be the disconnection time range in 7671 when it's Sam.
Yeah, for a general S type, I think you are right in that some allow you to preset a time delay manually on the front of the product. So I was thinking that was it. So, but we will check on that just when we've got a bit more time to see the information. But yeah, I think that's what that's referring to. So rated time delay is on. There are some devices that allow you to actually have a preset which is set typically by a screwdriver or small tool on the front of the device, so that you can vary that time delay. A general Type S type delayed is fixed. It's part of the product standard, which is then, as we said earlier in one of the questions, from that rating of 150 milliseconds up to 500 milliseconds.
Yeah, I see it sometimes in sort of marinas areas where they're using TT, and they use because they've got multiple downstream DVs. They have an RCD set at different times along that distribution cables route, and where it's hitting different boards. To keep their selectivity.
Yeah, because the guidance is if you've got time delayed to try and ensure you've got selectivity. If you can, you do ×3. Am I thinking in terms of the rated value?
That's rated value. Yeah.
So but again, that would be for a general Type S that you haven't got the facility to select a rated time delay on. But good question. If we as I think we are going to, because looking at the time, if we run out of time with that, we'll certainly pick that one up either in one of the social media questions that we point out, or we'll pick that one up in next month's. There's one there that's coming quickly that I think we can do. Is, are fire rated cable clips required for domestic installations? Well, the requirement for prevent cables from premature collapse is a requirement in all installation types. So there's the potential to use it. It doesn't specify that you have to use fire rated clips, but that's one possibility. You've got to meet that requirement of preventing premature collapse. Now, I think the one thing that often gets said about domestic installations is cables above plasterboard ceilings. Well, so long as the plasterboard ceiling has got the required fire rating, then cables above those will be deemed to be adequately supported by the plasterboard ceiling. But outside of that, so for example, if we had cables on wall surfaces, in particular above doors, which therefore could cause a problem if there were premature collapse, then those will need to be protected against premature collapse. Happy with that, James?
I think is there a question on the Q&A on that? I'm not sure. Generally above the plasterboard ceiling, it's considered negligible, isn't it? Because it's a finished ceiling, and by the time the wiring system collapses, the plasterboard ceiling's falling down, isn't it? It's the general consensus, I think. I mean, whether you have to do it temporarily, well, if the insulation is going to be in use without that finished ceiling, possibly, I suppose, you then want to do it, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Okay. There's a couple that I wanted to finish off from previous, so we'll just dive into those. So the first one being, do outdoor light fittings need to be IP44 rated? And again, a simple answer to that is no. That if we look in section 714 for outdoor lighting, it specifically says that they need to have at least IP33. Always remembering that 7671 is a minimum standard. You can always go higher, so 44 is not a problem, but the minimum required is specified in section 714 as IP33. But again, I think we mentioned these two regulations before. Consider those fundamental principles in 132, that everything has to take into account the environment in which it's being installed, and 512 in our selection and erection says that equipment has to be of a design appropriate to the situation which is being used, and shall take account of the conditions likely to be encountered. So it's at least IP33. There may be, because of its location, that it needs to be more. For example, it might be outdoor and near a fountain, in which case then it will need to be more, but purely for the fact that it's outdoor, at least IP33. And then something again that we touched on earlier, somebody asked if I've started work to Amendment 3 and I'm going to continue it, to which version should I certificate it? And I think we've already given the answer, but reminders on that, James, if I'm doing it to Amendment 3.
Sorry, David. So if you're doing it to Amendment 3, then that's the certification, the inspection test and certification you should be doing it to. You wouldn't interchange retrospectively. If you start off as Amendment 3, that's what you should be inspecting, testing, certificating it to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the current amendment and that could even be predated. Once October comes, if there's an installation that has been designed, that'd still be the case even then, still, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It was designed to an older amendment. If it was designed to Amendment 3 even from October 15th, then you would still inspect, test and verify it to that amendment.
Yeah. We're aware that in the past, when there's been this change from one edition to another, people working on large projects that have been designed way before new requirements of the later version were known, so they get continued and finished, inspected and tested and certificated to the previous version. But as I say, always, if you're involved in that, make customers aware as soon as possible, or as soon as practically possible, and certainly check contracts to make sure that the wording doesn't specify that you have to do it to the latest standard, which would then mean you need to consider what the changes are to bring it up, for example, to Amendment 4. Okay, once again, we've run out of time. We just very quickly want to say we appreciate that there may be some of you that aren't currently NICEIC certified. If you are interested in becoming an NIC certified contractor, then please do go to the website where we've got a range of schemes, both electrotechnical, MCS looking at renewables, and then other areas such as hazardous area, BAFE, certifier construction up in Scotland. We also do quite a range of training courses, both electrical, renewable, fire alarms, EV, solar PV, battery storage. So again, if you're interested in updating knowledge and skills by doing a training course, and there are a range of possibilities, both either in classroom, remote with a tutor, or fully online under your own speed, under your own time. Number of courses, number of type of courses available. Any final words from yourself? Again, it's always the fastest 45 minutes of my month. These things.
It's gone really fast. What was this? The equivalent of half time at England, wasn't it? So 45 minutes. So yeah, I don't no questions on what the next score is going to be then.
Well, yeah, and that makes me think that the second half was much better as well. So yeah, we might get a few comments to that end in the comments. But yeah, thank you. So
we won't do one following the next game at 1 in the morning, will we?
No, definitely not. Yeah, and that'll be a real test to see who does stay up to watch that. So yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it's late. It's a very hot evening, and there's lots been happening prior to this. So thanks very much. Some great questions, and we will pick up that time delay one just to get some clarification on it. If we didn't get round to answer your question tonight, apologies, but we will pick it up in the previous ones. So yeah, thanks very much for your time, and thanks very much for your patience in terms of us getting round to your questions. And yeah, just please do. We hope you join us again. We try and run these generally at the first Thursday of every month. So the next one is Thursday the 6th of August at 8 o'clock. We had to move this one from Thursday to Wednesday because we've got some other commitments tomorrow night, but generally first Thursday of every month. So yeah, we can definitely say the next one will be happening on Thursday the 6th of August at 8 o'clock. So please put that in your diaries, and post your questions, and we'll try and get round to answering as many as we can on that night as well. Okay, thanks very much for your time. Thanks, James. Cheers. And catch up with you next week.
Yeah, see you later.